Welcome to another episode of Nothing Moves Without Us, a black culture podcast. On every episode, Clifford and I discuss shows, movies, and music from the past 30 years that have played a pivotal role in the black experience.
We are the culture, nothing moves without us. We are the culture, yeah.
We are culture. Nothing moves without us.
All right, so welcome back. Season 2 of Nothing Moves Without Us, a Black Culture podcast. Here with our new co-host Tatiana. It's been a minute. It's been a minute. We're glad to have you on, Tatiana. Like I said, I'm eager to get the perspective of a black female who has a similar lifestyle. You know, I feel like we grew up in the same type of scenario. So it'll really kind of just spark and I feel like cultivate what we're trying to come across with this podcast, but also offer new perspectives, things that Thomas and I would have never may not innately like consider because we're just two males. But yeah, I'm glad to have you on. I'm glad for some new perspective, and yeah. Welcome.
Hi. Good afternoon. Good morning.
You want to say anything about yourself a little bit? I know you did we have a bio up for you on the website.
Yeah.
And we're gonna post an intro on our TikTok and Instagram. But feel free to drop a little bit before we officially start this episode.
Of course. Hey again, it's me, Tatiana, from Harlem. Tall, marriage efficient.
Are you a tall marriage efficient, or are you tall,
Tall.
and a marriage efficient?
Tall, marriage efficient. Tall, marriage efficient. I like photography. I'm into photography. From Harlem. Super excited to be here. Super excited to be a part of this. This is very cool.
All right. All right. So I guess just to kind of recap what this is, since we have talked about it, and granted, I think it's in the intro. Nothing Moves Without Us, a Black Culture podcast, is really focused on Black media the past 30 plus decades. We try not to focus on anything that's been made within the past 5 years. But the media we include is our music albums, television shows, and movies. And the goal is to just offer additional insight. We grew up on a lot of Black media growing up. And although there's this new diversity that exists now because there's more resources, I feel like we had it good growing up in the 90s and with
We definitely did.
representation in 2000s. So, we want to honor some of the artistry that paved the way for our lifestyles, our identity, but also just the artistry and the expressiveness of the Black experience. So yeah, today we're talking about Parenthood, the Parenthood, excuse me, the Parent, hood, starring Robert Townsend. But before we start that, we wanted to talk about the incident, the recent. You wanted to talk about the recent incident in Buffalo.
Yeah. So there was a shooting over the weekend on Saturday up in Buffalo at in a predominantly black neighborhood. A like 18-year-old white guy drove 3.5 hours to Buffalo and shot and killed about 10 people at a supermarket up there. Apparently, that area up in Buffalo is known to be a food desert, so people that live in that area go to that supermarket. A lot of black people from that area go to that supermarket to buy their food because there's not many resources up there. So it's weird. I really wanted to find something, positive to talk about, but there hasn't been much positive things happening this weekend. But
Right.
I do want to say if anyone does have the resources that they should definitely donate to the Buffalo Community Fridge for people who might at this time not feel safe going to that supermarket, and who knows if when's the next time they're going to be open. But Buffalo does have a community fridge. They have an Instagram. They have a Venmo directly linked to their Instagram. So I would say definitely check it out and donate if you can so that people can have the food that they need,
Right. Yeah, there's a lot to kind of pull from what you said. you brought up the fact that it's a community desert. So you think about the type of, and is it a predominantly black neighborhood?
Yeah,
I only have like surface news. Okay.
yeah,
So you think about the people going to who live in a food desert, right? So they're predominantly people who are like in need. Like
hmm
that's one aspect of it. Like it's attacking people who are maybe lower income. The fact that it is targeted as a black neighborhood. Yeah, I don't know. Like I'm like the choosing that specific area. It just seems particular, right?
yeah, definitely. The guy had like a 100, 200 page manifesto going on and on about like white supremacy, and he definitely did all of this intentionally. He targeted a demographic. It was 100% a hate crime. um Terrible, of course. But yeah, it's just heavy
Yeah,
weekend.
Eric and I were listening to the Star Report, which is a show I listen to a lot on YouTube.
Hmm.
Star from Star and Buck Wild on back in like the 2000s, Hot 97, Power 105, and he was doing a show on it, and they were a caller called in, and they were talking about gun laws, and the idea that you'd look at, he brought up Dylan Roof,
Hmm.
and kind of compared the two, just the idea of having someone who doesn't fit in to this neighborhood, the demographic of this neighborhood, of this church, and they're in this area, and then they kind of have this they're emboldened to kind of do what they want. um, and they were talking about Atlanta, like trying to pass gun laws, so trying to pass concealed and carry gun laws so that people think twice before they do things like that, because the trend, and I mean even the trend, the reality, right? It feels like that's the black experience, right? It's getting gunned down just because some white person woke up this morning and decided they wanted to.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, it's, I don't know. New York City also,
yeah,
like Sunset Park. I feel like that area in Sunset Park is mixed between like Hispanic and black people, but
yeah.
yeah. I don't know.
But yeah, it's definitely, you know some super heavy stuff. um but my prayers and my condolences go out to the Buffalo community for what they've had to go through this weekend, because I mean, it's crazy. It's just a constant thing.
Right. And there's also the shooting in Milwaukee, I believe, maybe Friday night or 2 nights ago.
See, I didn't even hear about that one. And I feel like, I don't know. I feel like the coverage should be a lot bigger than it is, because I only knew about it because I saw something on Twitter and then kind of followed it on Twitter. But if I hadn't, brought it up to Robert, he wouldn't have known until like today, because he saw
Right.
something like briefly on Instagram about it. So
So the
it's just crazy.
Milwaukee News is,
Hmm.
I'm getting this from NPR. At least 21 people were injured in three shootings after a Bucks game in Milwaukee. And I feel like I heard about the Buffalo incident on Twitter last night also.
Hmm.
The Milwaukee incident I didn't even see until maybe this morning. And I'm wondering, maybe it's because it's basketball related, so it's easy to kind of sweep it under the rug, because they don't want to put bad press on the game,
Yeah,
because people will lose money if they're scared to go to a basketball game.
yeah. I
I
also
wonder if that's
just
I wonder if that's part of it.
Yeah, I think it is, and I also just think that they're doing like a better job of kind of
They who
sweeping
so
these kind of like mass shootings um into a place where it's like they talk about it briefly and then they don't bring it up again.
right,
But I feel like if stuff like this keeps happening, then something needs to be done, especially when it comes to like, gun laws and, you know, just like white supremacy in general, because that was this guy's whole thing. Like, he felt like he
right.
was being replaced in, his country, and it's just so heavy.
Again, weird. He feels victimized,
Right.
but he doesn't focus on his community. He takes it
To a
three
different
hours away.
community. Yeah, exactly.
I don't get it.
I don't get it at all either.
Yeah, like this. Let's try to transition into something more upbeat. The parenthood. Yeah, this is I thought about this show actually initially when Thomas and I talked about it, but I think you brought this up. You wanted to do it, right?
Yes,
So
definitely.
um, yeah, let's talk about um, the show itself, The Parenthood. Right, it debuted January 18th, 1995.
Hmm.
Stars Robert Townsend, who I feel like has been well known and revered and respected throughout Hollywood as like behind the scenes director, writer.
Hmm.
Um, and it's him. It's so like, we spoke about 3 days ago, and you asked me what did I think about it.
Yeah.
I was like, I wanted to. I'll hold off. It's all right. What are your first? What's your first reaction to the show? Let's do that.
I huh, Robert Townsend. I'm just a big fan of Robert Townsend in general. And I definitely is because when I was a kid, my dad took me to see Meteor Man. Have you ever
Yeah,
seen Meteor Man?
yeah. I see.
Meteor Man is like it's so ridiculous, but it's so like but it's fun, and it's not just fun. It's it's cool because you get to see this guy just like do a thing you don't really see like black men getting a chance to do, which is like be silly sort of in like a corny way, but like wholesome, corny and
Right,
wholesome way. Um Also like Robert Townsend is from Harlem. I'm from Harlem. So I was definitely like, I gotta talk about Parenthood because like
right, right, right.
some of the show takes place in Harlem, in Manhattan. Um, but I don't know, like, I feel like, black people know who Robert Townsend is. And I feel like he's also somebody that like, has been like a good, representation of just people have this idea about black people and what they see on TV, and it's just like look at this character that he plays on this show, and he's like this upstanding dad, super involved with his kids, and he just wants the best for them. And with that, he kind of just he oversteps boundaries sometimes, but
Right,
like in a very like silly way, where he still like tries to respect his kids and understand where they're coming from. Also, I found like this really fun fact about the Parenthood, that the original name of the show was supposed to be Father Knows Nothing,
right,
which
right, right. I saw that too.
I thought that was really funny.
Where'd you see that at?
Where did I see that? This like little weird website um called like epguides.com.
Cool.
And it was like it should have been called Father Knows Nothing, or it was supposed to be called Father Knows Nothing, but they ended up changing the name, which was like, I get it, but Father Knows Nothing is pretty funny. But The Parenthood is like
Right,
is also a really good title for a show. But I just really love Robert Townsend, and I feel like this sitcom is something that people don't really talk about often when it comes to talking about black sitcoms of the '90s. And I was like, people gotta watch this, people gotta consume this and kind of see how like ridiculous and smart and funny it was. Um,
right.
that's definitely why I thought it was a good choice to pick The Parenthood, because it was a strong cast. And I don't know, I could go on all day to talk about how Robert Townsend is amazing, but yeah, that's why I picked it.
So I remember watching it as a kid. I really enjoyed it as a kid. I think it was smart. It was funny. It was whimsical.
Hmm.
It doesn't hold up. It doesn't stand. Well, this first season, so far, this first season doesn't really do it for
Yeah,
me.
yeah, I see that.
It's there's no soul to it.
Mm.
The kids like really make it. Yeah, I just found out that Suzzanne Douglas died last year. I
Yeah,
didn't even know
she
that,
passed last
which
year.
is wild,
Um,
right? Pancreatic cancer.
yeah,
I saw.
yeah.
Um, yeah, you have Robert Townsend as Robert Peterson, which is the dad.
Hmm.
Susan Douglas as Geraldine. Jerry Peterson, which is the mom. Kenny Blank as Michael Peterson, the younger son. Reagan Gomez Preston as Zaria Peterson,
Hmm.
the older daughter. Then there's Nicholas Peterson, which I think Nicholas and Cece are like the best characters at this point. Like they really just make the show. Nicholas just has like
I
this high brow, fun energy, and he's annoying, but it's fun eventually.
Nicholas is the cutest child I have ever seen in my life. And I could not get past it. Every episode I was watching, I was like, yo, this kid he's too cute. Like he's got no front
Right.
teeth. He's got like that chubby face, and he's just a busybody. He's hilarious. He's very
Right.
funny.
Right. Um, and then you have Faison Love, who I really like. I really liked Faison Love growing up
Yeah,
as Wendell on the
yeah,
show. But I
definitely.
feel like he's like in a different type of zone now. Like he's always on Vlad
Yeah,
TV, like snitch telling news and stuff like that.
yeah.
But yeah, like it's a beautiful and strong cast,
Hmm.
right? It's like beyond the nuclear family because they have four
Yeah.
kids. Um,
Don't forget about
and I
Derek.
thought, yeah, the like the other
He's the
goofy
he's
friend.
like the goofy sidekick for Robert's character, his like best friend that
Right,
he
right,
he also grew up with, and then also Mrs. Wilcox, who is like their nanny slash housekeeper slash Wendell's mother.
right, right, right.
So yeah, it's a good it's a weird dynamic, but it's good. I like it.
Yeah, and it's nice that it's generational, right?
Hmm.
Like I'm thinking about like while watching it, I was trying to find a medium for it, right? Because it has like the Cosby Show feel. It's just a bit way like if the Cosby Show was all the times Bill Cosby or Heathcliff Huxtable was goofy all the
Hmm.
time, like this is what the Parenthood would be.
I
But
honestly think it's like a combination of, which is, I don't know, this is going to sound so ridiculous. It's like Cosby Show slash Saved by the Bell, because,
interesting.
and this is why, it's because Robert's character is constantly like in this daydreaming, like what if this happens, and that's very
Right,
reminiscent
right,
of
right,
watching like Saved by the Bell and
right, right,
their like dreamy episodes they had where they would like not flashback, but they're like, oh, what if, and then they go into this weird thing. But I really like that about the show, how often he's just like, oh my gosh, if I do this or if I don't do this, this is what's going to happen, and then he's in like this
right.
little daydream. So
It's I don't know. I'm hoping season two
hmm.
kind of offers a bit more. And like when we talked Thursday, you were saying that a lot of shows initially the first like we talked about like we did a different world, and this first season is just like it's just whoa,
Yeah,
like what's going on? I don't remember it being this
yeah,
way. So hoping for me, really hoping that the rest of the seasons shift
yeah.
in dynamic.
It definitely, I feel like in some aspects played it kind of safe because they're trying to kind of feel out where their audience is and where the audience lies. Um,
Right,
but I won't reveal too much about the seasons following, but then like, the dynamic of it kind of changes. Some characters may or may not be there, but overall feel like it finds its footing more after the first season. But the first season in itself is just so like so strange and ridiculous, but like
right.
also enjoyable. Just like very silly.
And it yeah, I mean, I couldn't really find any information on why it was kind of created, but I feel like you kind of brought up that point earlier, just showing us a different dynamic of the Black
Hmm.
experience, right? We get to see like Saved by the Bell, which is predominantly white show. We get to see like Boy Meets World, and TGIF had all these predominantly white
Yeah,
shows. Um, Family Matters offered a Family Matters had the balance. But I get, and again, maybe this is just the first season. I'm doing a hard
right.
critique, but the first season is just very it's linear and it's just here to make you laugh, but
Yeah,
then it goes into bigger things. But this just feels like an oddball, goofy, fun show, which I think it's important, right?
yeah,
'Cause, again, it
definitely.
shows a different layer of what the Black experience is and can be, and it takes away the need to make it so serious, right? I think that's what it really boils down to,
Yeah,
right? Like everything regarding blackness doesn't have to be too serious, but then you get shows like Homeboys in Outer Space,
exactly.
and it's like it's good for what it is,
It's
right?
good
It's
for
good
what
for
it
what
is
it
because I feel like when you like really tune into TV and stuff, you get to see like these very ridiculous like shows with predominantly white cast, like Saved by the Bell, and you don't really have to give it a second thought on whether it's like silly. You're like, oh well, let's just Saved by the Bell. I feel like with Black TV shows, you really don't give that kind of shot to just have like a silly show that kind of may not be like, every episode is supposed to be where you walk away like, wow, that was super, super profound. But also, it's just like it's
Right.
a show that's just supposed to be like very enjoyable without feeling like it has to be such a heavy show. But that's just,
Right. Right. Right.
the first season of the show. So it's definitely like you could tell it's trying to find its footing. It's trying to find like, who's watching this? Me, I'm watching
I'm watching it.
it.
I'm watching it and I'm
Yeah.
loving it. So it also debuted with the Wayne's
Yeah.
brothers, and I guess that kind of makes sense because the Wayne's brother is just like the slapstick comedy that Parenthood kind of
Yeah,
is.
exactly. Where it's like it's very silly, but it makes you want to tune in and see what kind of like shenanigans like they get into.
Right, excuse me. Um. So how did you feel about the imagery, the visuals, the writing? Anything kind of stand out to you, or does it feel very
The
general?
visuals are pretty straightforward, I guess, because it's a situation comedy, taped in front of a live studio audience. So it's definitely like, you're watching it and it's a sitcom. So it's the same experience as watching Family Matters and beyond, so on and so forth. But definitely my favorite thing about the show is how often they have Robert just daydreaming. Robert Peterson is a daydreamer, and his mind goes to the worst, the worst case scenarios constantly. I also just really like the fact that in those daydreams, um, they go the route of we're going to use the same exact cast in these daydreams. So Mrs. Wilcox will be Oprah in this daydream, and
Right, right, right.
they don't they don't
I love that. I love
they
that too.
don't bring
Yeah,
anybody else, and it's just the same the cast itself, um, pretending to be other people or just being themselves, which is great. But I think that's like my favorite part of the show is how often he's just like, oh my gosh, if I don't do this, then Zarya is going to do this, and then it's this daydream that's so out of control, like the furthest thing from what his children would actually do or his wife would actually do or his friends would actually do, but he needs to avoid it by all means, and there's no need for that. So he's like an overreactor, but that's definitely my favorite part of the show. But like most sitcoms, it takes place in like, a house, um super small set, like, the same rooms, the kitchen, the living room. But yeah, definitely just your basic run of the mill situation comedy when it comes to how they shoot it.
right. Yes, I kind of feel this. I guess the daydreams are like what really elevate the show's
Hmm.
experience. I think without the daydreams, they might feel the shows would feel
Yeah,
kind of dry.
definitely.
Um, and I guess I really see why you love the daydreams. It really just adds that additional element, and it allows the over the top comedy to go even further
Yeah,
over the top because of it is his wild
exactly.
imagination. I'm thinking
His
of
daydreams justify
um,
his actions. So you get where he's coming from. You're like, I see why he
right,
did that because he's a little bit crazy.
right, yeah. I'm thinking of the last episode of
Hmm.
season one where he imagines Zarya getting pregnant by Ice Milk's kid or something like that, and she comes to the door. She's pregnant with one
And
baby,
he has
and Ice
has
Milk.
two babies.
Yeah, he has two kids, and then he has a baby carriage, and then while she's there, she's giving birth to the
Yeah.
fourth kid, and they're like rapping Lamaze to her.
And that's the thing
Yeah,
too,
I
because like
get
they
it. I
also
get
just bring in resident bad boy Lamont Johnson, who I don't know if you like are familiar with Lamont Johnson, but he's always in everything as
it.
like the bad guy. And then they bring him on to be like this rapper who's like just a really bad influence. But also with episode, that's the last episode of the season. Apparently, that was supposed to be the first episode of the season, or it's a probability that that was supposed to be the first episode of the season, for Parenthood. But also, like, there's so many guest stars in that first season. Like, I can't even be mad at how ridiculous the show was. Like, they had Coolio. Coolio was
Right,
on
right, right.
episode 13. Just
I feel like Coolio was like a resident resident guest star in like all the
Yeah, he was on
shows.
Martin.
I kind of feel like,
He was on this.
yeah. You know, and I guess it's because he was in LA, right? Like he lives
Hmm.
in LA and he has, I don't know, I feel like Coolio might be like the first pop rapper, I think, right? I feel like Coolio is more
I think
pop
he was like
than a lot
well
than
received, especially because of Gangsta's Paradise, maybe. I don't want to speak to
right.
that though, and then someone's like, "No, you don't know Coolio." But but he was on there. They had a lot of guest stars on the show. Like I was going through it. I was like, "Whoa, is that is that?" And it was all these people. Gilbert Gottfried was on the show.
Yeah, yeah. Or rest
Rest
in
in
peace
peace.
to Gilbert
Yeah,
Gottfried. Recently passed
yeah.
away, right? There was that older black woman from 227. I'm gonna look it.
Oh
I'll
yeah,
look it
she's
up
on
right
the
now.
episode with the Neighborhood Watch.
Neighborhood
I
Watch, I
couldn't
think.
remember her name, but also like Helen
Helen
Martin.
Martin. Yeah.
I wrote her name down
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Who was it? Lawanda. Yeah, Lawanda Page, who's on the eighth episode. She's also like a staple in so many like black TV shows and movies, playing like the small character of like the older woman that's a little bit like out of her mind. She's the one that catfishes Michael. She catfishes Michael.
I don't think I remember that.
She
I don't think I remember.
There's
That's
some
funny.
catfishing on this show too. Uh
That's,
but it's like so many because Dion Richmond's on there. He was on the Cosby Show. And he was on Sister Sister. He plays the love interest for Zaria in like episode 2. Tamala Jones is on the show as a cheerleader. She's been in a bunch of stuff. Tiny Lister from Friday is in it. Like they really were like, we're gonna bring everybody that was in any '90s movie to be on this show in the first season, and they did. They
yeah.
really did.
And that's kind of like how it was and how
Yeah.
it should be, right? Like it's feeding people. Like I really love. We talked about
Hmm.
Abbott Elementary a little bit, which is like probably one of the best black show, one of the
Hmm.
best shows, period, in a while. But an amazing black theme, a black
Right.
focus show. The the was let me get this right. But my point is that I really love seeing older black actors and actresses in modern
Hmm.
shows, right? Like it keeps the like the learning experience alive. It allows us to stay us as like fans and people in the black experience to just see the growth of the characters and see them in new spaces, know that they're
Hmm.
still working, be a part of their
Yeah.
lives. Yeah, but Cheryl Lee
I
Ralph,
love
yeah,
Cheryl Lee
yeah.
Ralph.
Like her, she was in Moesha. I started watching the
Hmm.
Parkers a little bit, and seeing her, and I'm like, yo, that's
Yeah.
like it feels dope, like, and especially like now, like having a podcast and going back to old episodes and seeing all this talent, seeing all these people, and looking at where they are now and seeing
Hmm.
them still working. It's
Definitely. And
inspiring,
I feel like when even when you look at Parenthood, when you look at like it came out in '95, and around that time is when like there was so much black cinema too, like comedies, dramas, like still giving these actors that might not get as much screen time, that might get pigeonholed as one certain character, be able to move on and be on these television shows and still be recognizable faces and still be on this show and being like, oh, that's so and so from this, that's so and so from that, like giving them jobs, which I think is very important too. Like you
right?
said, like you can't just you know forget about these people that open the doors for us. You got to keep bringing them in and letting them work. You can't like leave them at the wayside.
Right, right. Yeah, that's part of our individual responsibility and like responsibility as the younger generation. Finding ways to ensure that the older people still, can still be seen and
Yeah,
still be a part of part of
exactly.
the community. Um, so I remember really loving the intro video as a kid because it's just very quirky and it feels very young, and I think that adds on to the overall feel of the show,
Hmm.
just feeling goofy. The colors, I remember I think Mrs. Wilcox comes in one scene and she has like a grocery bag and it's like these highlighted colors on the grocery box. But again, like watching it now as an adult, my initial reaction is like, okay, like this isn't that
Hmm.
fun and entertaining. But when I watched it this morning, like I really just kind of focused I was proud of the black love aspect, right? It's
Yes,
the
definitely.
father, the wife comes down, kisses her, giving the kids like, I'm in control. Father, like father knows best, right? Like
Hmm.
don't eat the cookie for breakfast. Have this his apple. You see
Yeah.
Nicholas like, oh, what is like you said, his
Oh
toothless
no.
self like, oh,
No front
um,
teeth. The whole first season. It's just so cute, man. Like, oh
and
man.
the friends come by. It. I think that's really it. Yeah, like evolving from the thought of initially just not thinking it was all that because it doesn't live up to it, but really seeing the message behind it. And again, it's the community aspect.
Hmm.
Thomas and I talked about the PJs, and in the PJs episode, it's a super, and you see everyone he interacts with on a regular basis, and like that's what it should be, right? And at the end, they
Yeah.
all come together and they're all having breakfast together, right?
Yeah.
They're all a family, and I think
Hmm.
that's what's really dope about the intro.
Yeah. And especially what you said about like Jerry and Robert's like relationship, where you constantly are aware that they're like in a happy relationship, they're in a like healthy relationship. He doesn't always like they don't always see eye to eye, but they're always very respectful of one another.
Right.
They don't really have a lot of conflict in this first season where they're like butting heads so terribly that it can't be resolved, or you're like, oh, Robert's being such a jerk, or Jerry's being such a jerk. You're just kind of like,
Right.
oh, they have differences of opinions. This is obviously like a misunderstanding rather than like a lack of communication. So that's nice to see too. Like it's like very healthy. Where like when you watch Martin, which I will, Martin is one of the funniest TV shows ever created. But you see, like Gina and Martin's dynamic is very different. It's not healthy, but it's very funny. But with these two, they love and respect each other, even after 17, 18, 19, 20 years of being together, being married, having teenage kids, having a toddler and a child not child age, school age kid. So that's really nice to see that it's like they're still like very lovey dovey too.
And did anything within the intro kind of stick out to you? Did it feel nostalgic? Do you remember how you felt about it as a kid watching it initially?
Um, the intro itself is just like never really like spoke to me like that. I always thought like always watching the intro, I always thought like Zaria had like the coolest clothes. I know that. I was like, yo, Zaria be dressing to the nines. She always looks so cool. And then that's really most of what I took from it. And that's pretty much it. With the intro, it's like the song was really catchy, but in itself, it was just like I was just like, Zaria's, yeah, yeah, exactly,
it is a dope instrumental. I can't front. I like
yeah.
it.
It's cool, but then I'm just like, all right, let's start the episode.
Yeah, it has like a nice hip hop feel to it,
It
which I
does.
mean everything does, right? But
Because
yeah,
Robert
yeah, yeah.
Townsend, I feel like he does such a good job of you know letting people know he's for the culture without overdoing it in like a I wouldn't say, I was gonna say overdoing it in a corny way because Robert Townsend is like kind of corny in this first
Yeah,
season,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but like in such a wholesome, nice way. Like you're not like put off by it. You're like, oh, he's a dad and he's trying.
Right,
That's all
right.
I can like
That,
take from it.
I love that description. I feel like that's a great way to kind of sum him up, but also transition into the characters and what we thought about them.
Yeah.
So you said Robert Townsend is just a dad and he's trying. So let's hear more about what you feel about Robert and any of the other characters, anyone that stands out, or you
Um.
just can't stand you.
Okay, so Derek was very hard to like. I will say that. I feel like
He's like Cole, but not
he's
as
he's not.
creatively
Yeah.
corny and dumb as Cole is. Like
Yeah.
Cole is like a special unintelligent. Derek is just
Yeah.
very generic
You're
unintelligent.
like
Yeah, he
Derek. That's enough. We've got Wendell for this. Um. But I did think Robert Peterson's character always stands out for me because he is just you can tell he's just his first priority is being like a really good dad and a really good husband, and everything takes a back to that, which is really cool to see. Like his his career is important to him, but his kids are like number one, and also just making sure that his wife is happy, which is really cool. And I think like Suzzanne Douglas as Jerry was just like, she's so beautiful, and like this hairstyle she has like the first whole season, the short like bob of braids is just so cute. And she's also like, you know, a law student, um working to get her degree, and he's super supportive of that too. um I like the dynamic between Zaria and Michael. I also like that they all have like very plain names except Zaria. They're like Michael, Cece, which I'm sure is probably short for Cecilia, Nicholas, and then there's Zaria. Um, Zaria and Michael's dynamic is really funny because it's just two siblings that can't stand each other, and she lets those short jokes fly. Like it's like
Right.
all she does is make fun of how short he is, and that's always really funny to me anyway. Um, but overall, like the entire family is very, very. It's like a very wholesome um, relationship. Even Cece carries, like you said, Cece and Nicholas are like they're not super super huge parts of the show in a sense that they have a lot of dialogue because they are so young, and Cece especially. But whenever she's talking, you're like paying attention because she's funny. She's a funny 3 year old on that first
Right.
season. I also really like Miss Wilcox. I feel like she should have been utilized a little bit more because she is very funny. And Faison Love as Wendell is just like a delight. That first episode, he was I can't remember what he was going on and out, but he just kind of like stared out into space and he was just being extra weird. And I was like, this is the first episode. This is a y'all were willing to take this chance with Faison Love, and it was worth it because he's definitely like hilarious.
Nothing Moves Without Us, a Black culture podcast, is brought to you by the Black Excellence Shop. Shop our Black Excellence calendar and journal bundle, 366 days of Black history, self-love, and personal growth. Receive 10% off your order with coupon code CULTURE at shopblack366.com.
What did you think of what did you think of the dynamic with everybody on the show? Who do you think is your favorite character out of everybody?
Um, I love Hate Nicholas. I love Hate Nicholas. And I think part of it is I'm wondering if I see like myself as a kid in him, even though like I wasn't toothless and like chubby as he is, but just like greedy, like him. Like, and like annoying because I feel like I was annoying as
Yeah.
a little kid.
Yeah.
I wanted shit. Like why not? Why can't I have stuff? Like gimme, right?
Yeah.
But he's just funny, man. I like his imagination. I like the episode where he had an imaginary friend. I think what it really is that I want to get his name right. Curtis Williams, who plays Nicholas, I think he's just a phenomenal actor at that age, and maybe it's just him just like really just being a kid, but he's just always on cue. Like same with Cece. And granted, Cece talks less. And she just has like her one-line zingers that really get
They're
you.
definitely scene
But
snatchers.
yeah. But Nicholas is just a fun, goofy kid, and maybe there's a part of me that's also like projecting, like wishing I wish I had some of his like his freedom and funness as a kid because
Yeah.
I feel like I was more suppressed.
Yeah.
Um,
That was
it's
another
interesting
thing.
that
Yeah, that you
go
get
ahead.
to see the kids like get to be themselves and kind of like figure out themselves, you know. Their parents aren't really like you can't do that, or I mean they are sort of, but not in a like
Right,
oppressive way, you know. They have their rules, but they also like kind of like respect their kids' autonomy too. Um
right.
but yeah, definitely. But Nicholas, you're right. I mean, we should just do a whole episode where we just talk about Nicholas's smile because he's so cute. It's like no, because I didn't have the front teeth either for a long time when I was a kid. And I remember like one time I was walking down the hallway in elementary school and there was a teacher, I think his name was Mr. Carlin. And I was walking by him. He said, your teeth still haven't come in? And I was like, no, they haven't. But thank you for asking.
That's why. So you brought up I forgot what you said exactly, but it was making me think about just like number one, what the family represents. And I
Hmm.
think part of my challenge in watching the show was that they represent a middle class Black American
Hmm.
experience that um, I didn't have, and just I I understand that it's the art, but it feels just so just far fetched, right? This like
Hmm.
the experience itself. Like how many of us have met how many of us have met the Cosby Show family in real life, right? How many of us have really met the Parenthood family in real life? We know the Wayans brothers, right? Like that's realistic.
Yeah.
Um, Family Matters. th- There's always this disconnection, I think, with television
Right.
and looking for the truth in it. And yeah, you brought up the fact that the kids are allowed to be themselves, and I think
Hmm.
that's what these shows that really offer the diverse Black experience represent, and I think are important for representation. That
Hmm.
it shows you just the freedom of just like don't hound your kids, don't teach your kids to live in fear. You teach them less of you give them teachable moments and situations,
Yeah.
but their whole life experience can't be fear and worry and concern.
Right.
um and this show, like you grant, like they said, the first season is just fun in life, and maybe that's just what it needs to be, right? It needs to be fun and goofy and hilarious and just an escape from all the negativity of some of the negativities, not all, some of the negativities of the Black experience.
Hmm.
um so at times it was difficult for me to kind of disconnect, but the again, being older and really wanting to enjoy the relationship dynamics, right? Like Robert and Jerry have a beautiful relationship. He like Robert doesn't feel At times Robert feels like the way today's modern man is treated,
Hmm.
where he's just very passive, and he's a herb, right? Like the wife runs the show.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's really being put out on mainstream. Like it is what it is.
Uh-huh.
But I like that he still kind of has a balance, because it is still focused on him as the what is the word, the
Uh-huh.
paternal figure in these kids' life.
Yeah.
And he has all. It's dope to see parents have individual relationships with their children.
Hmm.
It's dope to see how the children's cooperate, like can Zaria and Michael just having their bickering, but it's still love, it's still comedy, like all shows, like Laura and Eddie.
Yeah, they're
Like
like
it's just what it
frenemies.
is.
They're frenemies. Like
Right,
they, for the most
right,
part,
right, right.
they get on each other's nerves. But if they need to do something for the greater good, which is like something that they both want, and they know they have to work together, then they'll do it. Um,
Oh, I'll charge you for it.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But the thing I feel like with Robert's character is more like, which they don't touch on this season, and I can't wait till we start watching like second season and forward, is that he didn't have such a great childhood. That's all I'm gonna say about it. But I feel like it's one of those things where he kind of like he got this opportunity to be this big name professor at this university and have his wife work towards like a similar goal of being like a lawyer, and wanting to provide like a really good life for their kids, and not really seeing much of that on TV besides like the Cosby Show and Family Matters, where they show like you said, like middle class. Um, but with Robert and Jerry's relationship, I think I don't feel like Robert Townsend's character, Robert Peterson, is like a herb. But he's so anxious. He's just an anxious person, and it just seems like Jerry is so level-headed that
Right,
she kind of balances him out. I don't think like she's the one that calls the shots, because there was the episode where Zaria wants to go to the concert. She's like,
right, right, right.
"Oh, like mom, can I go?" And she's like, "Your dad already said no, that's it." And she didn't even agree with what he said. She thought that she should be able to go and be able to make her own decisions, but she backed him because he put his foot down and said, "No, I don't think it was okay." And then they have a conversation later where they talk about it and they go, "You know what? Let's give her a chance to prove that she is responsible, and let's not be." And they also, it was like an issue with whether they were being misogynist by letting Michael do something but not letting Zaria do something. They had a
Right.
conversation privately, and then he changed his mind, and he's like, "All right, So it's not like she was like, running the show, but she wants him to be more level headed. Like, if you want these kids to respect you
Yeah.
down the line, you have to treat them the same. You can't treat Zarya differently from Michael because she's a girl and he's a boy. Um, but she definitely, I feel like, is somebody that has to say, you gotta relax. You gotta
Yeah.
chill. Which it comes up, I feel
I
like, in
think.
a lot of episodes where she's like, you have to calm down, you know?
I mean, I feel like you described it better. It is about him being
Hmm.
anxious, but yeah, I mean, I guess that's what it
Yeah.
is, and I feel like I said a lesser version of what it
Yeah.
is now, but yeah, I was yeah. Um, and I think what's really unique, I guess, with the characters is the Wendell and Derek
Hmm.
aspect. And I'm thinking about Cole and Tommy, and having like two incompetent
Yeah.
best friends, right? And I was wondering, like, the saying that you are the company you keep to an extent,
Hmm.
right? And association breeds similarity, all of that. And Robert being this high esteemed professor, and his anxiety his anxiety and quirks kind of bring him down to the incompetence
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
Wendell and Derek.
exactly.
Like there was the episode, the it was a, let me just pull it up. Sorry.
They're like two devils. You know how they say the whole devil and angel on one side?
Right,
They're like two devils on one side saying like, Robert, listen. And then he's like, all right, they're right. I have to listen to what they're saying, even if they make absolutely no
right.
sense.
So, season 1, episode 10. Don't be alarmed. Nicholas's bike gets
Hmm.
stolen. So instead of paying a professional, Robert wants to save money, and he hires um,
Wendell.
Wendell and Derek to do it. But he doesn't ask for the security
Yeah.
code. They put they put an alarm system on everything, right? It's like they're walking on a carpet trigger alarm, and the alarm
Bedroom
goes
light.
off. The cops,
Light trigger.
right. Bedroom light, toilet seat, and Randall. I'm sorry, Randall. I'm thinking of This Is Us. And Robert keeps getting tickets from the police. So he has this like innate
Yeah.
intelligence. He has the ability to kind of to to show that he is. Um, forget that. I think that friendship dynamic is just weird to me.
It
And I
makes
think it's him just wanting to move on
I don't
from
think
maybe
so.
like the goofiness of who he
I think it
was,
makes sense
but
to
still holding
me.
on to good
Yeah,
friends.
that's I think what it is. It makes sense. I feel like at least what I can get from the first episode, these three guys grew up together and they've always been friends. And while Wendell and Derek are, more messy and weird, Robert's like grown up and he has a family now. They don't necessarily have it, but he's still friends with them because he's still like, these are my friends, whatever. And so they have like this really silly dynamic where they really just talk him into trouble or encourage Robert's like anxiety and his bad behavior, where he's like, it's like, oh, we should follow Zarya to this concert because, oh, what if there's like, what if there's trouble? And then he's like, yeah, let's dress up and go to this concert. And then he really convinces this guy to dress up like a gangbanger, right? And go to this concert to follow Zarya, who's there minding her business and like doing a good job of not getting in trouble. She's literally there to hear the
Right,
music and then
right, right.
leave. And they're so over worried that they cause all these problems, But instead of listen, that's what comes in. It's like Jerry's his voice of reason, and then he has like Wendell and Derek on the other shoulder, like feeding into his anxiety. Like, no, we got to get Zarya out of there. And then that's what we said. Like his mind goes to this place where he's like, oh my god, if Zarya goes to this concert, she's gonna get pregnant and she's gonna ruin her life. She's gonna have 4 kids by somebody named Ice Milk. What are we gonna do? And it wasn't even that serious at all.
Right,
He created the drama that led to it being like this big thing, and then you find out at the end of the episode, the person he couldn't have trusted was Michael because Michael was at the same
right,
concert and like lied about it. So it's like he's just a silly man.
right. It's just, I've kind of been talking about differentiating between like what we define as
Hmm.
manhood and boy and male, and the idea that not every male is a man, and being a man is really just owning up to your
Right.
responsibilities of life and stuff
Hmm.
like that. And I was thinking about while you're speaking, again, the relationship dynamic between Derek and
Hmm.
Wendell, and that they are like his fragile masculinity, like his
Hmm.
insecurities, because they're making him like he has a great, like, he has an amazing life,
Yeah.
right? Amazing life, an amazing wife, amazing family, and you and your wife have this conversation, you agree on something, and then your fragile male friends are like, "Yo, your daughter could be doing this," and you're like, "Well, it sounds
Yeah.
true, right? That sounds true."
Yeah.
I like
He's like
that. I like that.
he's just very, nervous about being a dad. You can tell because he doesn't want to mess up. He wants his kids to,
Right,
be able to be who they want to be and be smart and carry themselves, in a way that they are proud of and that he is proud of. But it's also just, he's just so silly because he's, there's times where he has to have like these difficult conversations with his kids and he doesn't know how to do it. But like overall, you always get this feeling from this character Robert that he's just an upstanding, wonderful guy. That's always what I've got from watching the show. It's like, see, this is the thing too. I hate to backtrack and start talking about this. I hate almost all sitcom dads. They make them so ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, oh, like, why are they so befuddled? But then you have like
right.
Robert. You have Uncle Phil from the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, where they're like these upstanding dads that they don't always,
Well, do you mean all black dads or just all dads in general for sitcoms? Just to specify.
all pretty much all, they're all like annoying. Like I couldn't stand Al Bundy. I couldn't stand the
I love Al Bundy.
I couldn't stand Al Bundy.
I love
Moesha's dad was, if I could fist fight anybody on this planet, it would have been Moesha's father.
it. Would be-
He was just he well, we're not talking about Moesha, but but
Okay.
Pete, like Robert Peterson was just like all around this upstanding guy, but was just such a worrywart because there's one episode, what's it called? Bite Me, which is the episode where he's supposed to have the sex talk with Michael, and he just doesn't know how to do it. And he's like, "Oh, we need to sit down and have this sex talk." And Michael's like, "I'm 15 years old. I don't need this." And instead of, having that uncomfortable conversation, he was like, "All right, you can just learn from the internet." And it was a bad idea because he did end up, like I said,
Right.
getting catfished by an old woman who was going by the name Hot in Harlem. um,
Was it you in Harlem? Was it you?
but like he freaks out because and that's why I say Jerry's like she's just a voice of reason. She goes, "Hey, they were handing out condoms at Michael's school today." And the first thing Robert says is like, "We have to call the police. We have to call the police." And she's like, "No. Did you have the sex talk with him?" And she was like, "Well," he was like, "Well, I got to the pollen part and maybe I mentioned some like skunks." And she was like, "You have to have a talk with him about it." But he's just being a weird dad, but he's a good dad. They eventually figure it out, but it's like, shenanigans ensue first.
I don't. I feel like I don't get it. I don't get him being a good dad versus other TV dads. I feel like all the TV dads. Carl Winslow is a good dad. I
I
feel
couldn't stand
Al
Carl
Bundy's a
Winslow. I
scumbag.
couldn't stand Carl
Why
Winslow.
not?
He had like, there was this thing that it's just, he used to make this face. I swear, he used to make this really like face whenever he was talking to
When he shake his
Harriet,
head
Harriet,
and be
Harriet,
upset.
and I'm just like, he
Yeah.
overstepped boundaries in a way that made his kids like very mad at him. Like with Laura, with Eddie. Like, remember he kicked Eddie out? He kicked Eddie out at one point when Eddie went to college. But like the dads always make me upset on these sitcoms because they make them so hard and insensitive. Um, but like I feel like Robert's character is always, at least through this first season, willing to learn, willing to listen early on. Whereas with other TV dads, these bad things have to happen first. Robert just imagines the bad things happening and acts on it. and they that bad thing
Right.
happens, and then they're like, and then they learn from it. Like, maybe I should have been nicer.
How, how did you feel about Bill Cosby or Heathcliff Huxtable?
I I haven't watched the Cosby Show in a very very long time, but when I did watch the Cosby Show, I did like Heathcliff a lot. Because he was a funny dad, and he wasn't like I guess insensitive as a lot of dads are portrayed to be on TV. Um, but it's been such a long time since I've watched it. Like, I was just always thought the Cosby Show was very very funny. I really like the dynamic on there. Um, but yeah, I would say Heathcliff and Robert,
Uncle
Uncle
Phil.
Phil. Those were always really good dads. Um,
I have another. This might be. I hope this is my
mhm.
last follow up question because I feel like I'm
Uh
pulling on a
huh.
little string here. Do you think that so you consider
Hmm.
Robert Townsend? Excuse me. Gotta stay in
Robert
character.
Peterson.
Robert
Uh huh.
Robert Peterson, right?
Hmm.
College professor. Uncle Phil,
Hmm.
lawyer, and who's the third person?
Hmm.
Heathcliff Huxtable,
Hmm.
a doctor, right? They're all dads that you like. You like the way they're presented because they're fair. Do you think subconsciously there's some type of message that affluence and education this offers more understanding and rationality, like comparing to Carl Winslow, who's, or maybe it's, white
Hmm.
collar job versus blue collar. Carl Winslow's just an everyman job. Al Bundy, everyman. Do you think maybe the white collar aspect offers something socially in the TV shows or just in real life?
I know. I
Yeah.
don't think so. I feel like it definitely leans more in like when you think about it to their upbringings. Not sure about what Cliff Huxtable's upbringing was, but I think Robert Peterson's upbringing and Uncle Phil's upbringing, they're from like the hood, and then they moved forward. And I don't think it has to do really with the affluence, but those are the a lot of the parent dynamics they give us. I just really hated Carl Winslow because of his pompous face. That was really what it was doing it for me.
Okay.
And he was very unfair when it came to, I feel like, how he treated Laura versus Eddie in terms of like, sexism and stuff like that. And they were horrible to Steve Urkel. So there's also some reason why
Right,
I
right,
get
right.
it, why they were horrible to Steve Urkel, but they could just, tell him to stop coming over. But that then it would be a TV show. So let me not go too
Right, right,
far
right.
out and be like, why did they treat Steve Urkel that way? But I think it had less to do with them and their jobs and more of how like maybe these characters had more of an influence on how their maybe these actors had more of an influence on how their characters were supposed to be, you know? Um I don't know, they just gave me more of a like a genuine like nice dads and people than the other dads I've seen on TV, you know?
Got it, got it. So any standout
Oh,
episodes for you
how
during this
many
first
stand
season?
out? So many. Every episode stood out to me. But like Father Like Hell, which was like season one, obviously, episode 5. That's the episode where they realized that Michael's dating like this 19-year-old girl, and
How old is he
he's
during the show? Is he
15.
15?
He's 15 years old. He's
Okay.
dating this girl that's 19, and he's saying, "Oh yeah, she's a sophomore, but she's like a sophomore in college." And initially, Robert is like very bothered.
Naive, just
Right?
like his dad, right?
He's very bothered by this, Robert. He's like, "What? This is not okay. This is a woman." And Jerry's like, "No, let's just see how it goes," which was insane. But then she ends up. Her name is Patrice. She ends up trying to bang the dad. Like, she's like, "Oh, he's so nice to me and he gave me this flower and he must like me back," and like starts making these like really aggressive moves on him, and he's just not with it. And it never occurs to him to be with it. He's just like, "This is gross, this is terrible." And then it comes the what if, the daydreaming of it again, where he like imagines he's on Dateline and that he's being interviewed for being a pervert. It bothers him so much. He's just like, I can't do this. Like it just makes him so uncomfortable. And I feel like that's why he's such a stand-up guy, because he's just like, this is so gross. This is a child. I don't have anything to do with this. He's telling everybody about his concerns too off the bat. You know, a lot of the times when you watch these shows, like the person who feels like they're being done wrong will hide it until the end because they want to try and figure it out themselves first. But he's like honest about it off the bat.
Right.
He's like, yo, your girl's trying to make a play for me. And they're like, you're bugging. That's not what's happening. She's just being friendly. And then, you know, at the end of the episode, obviously he was right. And everyone's like, oh, she was trying to make a pass at him. Oopsie. But I felt like that was one of the episodes that stuck out to me because who in the hell would let their 15-year-old son date a 19-year-old woman in college and be okay with it? Luckily, they nipped it in the bud, and it was the last we will probably ever see of Patrice. But I was really sitting there like, what would this 19-year-old want with this 15-year-old boy? And why is Jerry, of all people, seem to be cool with it? You know, that was really something else. But
Right.
even in that episode, he was just like, I'm trying to do what's best for my kids. I don't like this dynamic at all. He makes his concerns like known very early on. I feel like in the first 5 minutes, he's like, this is too weird. I don't like it.
I forget, did the parents know that she was a sophomore in college, or
I
did they
think
just
they
assume it?
assumed off the bat that she was a sophomore in high school, and then when she says that she, attends NYU and she's 19, then
A
I mean
sophomore in high school
sophomore
and
in
she's
college,
19?
and she says that she's 19.
Okay.
That Robert's like, what do you want with my son? He is a boy. Um, but yeah, that was definitely one of the episodes that stood out to me. Also,
Cool.
trying to think, was that episode 2? I think it was episode 2. Give me 1 second. I'm pretty sure it was episode 2 with Dion Richmond. Yes, the rake, the fake, and the gopher snake. Did you get to see that one with Dion Richmond where he has a crush on Zaria?
Yeah. From
He's from
what is he
Sister
from?
Sister. He was on the
Oh,
Cosby Show too. So he
all
has
right.
like
Okay. Okay.
he has the crush on Zaria, but he's a friend of Michael's, and then he decides
Right.
like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go for it. And then off the bat, like Michael, yeah,
Troy. There
Michael
we go.
and
Troy.
Robert are like, we don't want this to happen because he seems to be like a womanizer, and but Zarya just wants to try it out. She wants their trust, so she goes, but then she realizes that they're watching her every move. Because she feels like she's not being trusted enough, she starts making it seem like she actually does like Troy to piss them off, which
Right.
I think is very funny. And he was also, apparently Troy was very boring and she really wasn't interested in him at all. But I felt like that episode was pretty good too. Dion Richmond, handsome young man. He's always also been a cutie pie, I feel. But yeah, I really liked that episode too. Which episodes did you like? I feel like that or stood out to you. Like a lot of the episodes stood out to me where I was like, wow, this is ridiculous. I love this.
I like
Mm-hmm.
I liked episode 3, Pizza Man, only because it's nostalgic, and I just
Mm-hmm.
remember watching it as a kid, and that's when Michael is just going through different jobs, and Robert
Yeah.
bets him that he can do his job for like the end of the week, but he finds out that Michael is working at the pizza restaurant, and that's when Guilford Godfrey stars. And it's just like it's like the peak of like
Yeah.
slapstick comedy, right? He starts off, he's making one pizza, he's like sauce, cheese, and he has his little conveyor belt line, and he memorizes everything, and then people start coming in, the
Yeah.
orders start coming in, and then he tries to make like a conveyor belt full of pizzas, and
And
he
he
just
puts him on the
messes it up, of
floor.
course.
And he makes the pizzas on the floor.
Right,
But
right,
also, like, Gilbert
yeah,
Godfrey hates Robert because he failed him. And that's why he works at the pizza restaurant.
right. I like the anniversary episode just because, again,
Hmm.
it's the dynamic of Robert and
Yeah.
his two bozo friends, right? He's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna tell her." They're like, "No, don't tell your wife. Listen to
Right.
single me. Don't tell your wife you got her this and that. Like, nah, 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 nah. Ruin her day, make her miserable, right? Because like it makes no sense, right? Like, who does your wife live with? Who she gonna be
You.
upset at? And then yeah, and then it's always at the end, like at the end of the episode,
Uh huh.
there's like a snowstorm, and he makes a reservation in a fake name, and he's like, no, like I planned it. Listen, she calls the restaurant, and since he put it under a fake
They're like,
name,
no,
his
there's no
name isn't there.
reservation.
Like it's funny, right? It's funny,
Yeah.
small little things like that, and then at the end of it, Derek is like, "Happy anniversary, happy anniversary, Jerry." See, I remembered, and like
Yeah.
your friend shit on you, but he doesn't learn his lesson not to listen to them.
And Jeffrey Osborne is on this episode too.
Let's see.
Who, I mean, I don't know because I was born in 1987. Maybe that's why. But it's like, oh, Jeffrey Osborne. He's
Oh, who
like
is
an
he on the
R&B
episode?
singer, that I wasn't familiar with before the episode. He's the one that's like singing through
Got
the
it, got it,
door.
got it, got it.
And Jerry was like, "You don't even sound like Jeffrey Osborne." And then realizes it actually is Jeffrey Osborne, and that that Robert wasn't lying about all
Right.
the stuff he put into it, but like again, miscommunication because he did not forget their anniversary, but he let these two idiots talk him into like trying to make it a surprise because I don't. Why do people think that pissing someone off before you give them this surprise is like the best mode of action? Because I feel like I would still be mad. You imagine somebody giving you like a miserable day and then
I
they're
don't
like,
know.
surprise, I made you miserable for this surprise. I'd be like, come on, man.
Yeah, I think that's just like what
Hmm.
life always is, though, right? Life is life is like a series of letdowns, and then it's like, oh, here's this little thing, and you're like,
You're like,
yeah, finally
yay.
something worked out, right? Like it
Yeah.
works on some people. I get it.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know,
I
and people find it
guess.
funny, I guess. And I think that the other episode that I really liked was the trial by
Oh,
Jerry, and
yeah.
this is episode number 9, and this is I think Mrs. Wilcox is the judge, and the case is whether Zari and Michael can have a
Yeah.
party while the parents are gone, and it's just fun. Like it's fun, it's cute.
Hmm.
Everyone is kind of involved in it, which I really like episodes where you get to
Hmm.
see everyone interact. Like the main characters interact in one scene together. Like I think those are very important and powerful episodes. Carl Michael show did that very well. Um, yeah, like that's it. Like nothing too amazing. Like I said, this is just for me. It's just like direct
Hmm.
this comedy. It hits or misses. I I
Hmm.
snickered a few times, honestly, but I think for this first season, I've really just been focused on important
Right.
themes like representation and the, whatever additional artistry I can
Yeah.
pull from
I
it for like
definitely think it
inspiration
was
and
one of
message.
those, like I said, said before, with these first seasons of television shows, they really do play it safe in order to kind of like get their foot in the door and be able to have a second season or a third season. So this definitely
Right.
played it like very, very safe because they don't talk much about like racism. They don't talk much about like um, inequity or inequality or anything like that. But you can see, like I said before, like they're trying to establish, an audience, and kind of see what's the next steps after that. Like they definitely played it safe. Um, but I definitely think that, I mean, I giggled. I laughed. I thought it was cute. I thought it was really cute.
Yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
always what's most important. Um, so one thing that
Hmm.
a note that I wrote is so I'm not a I'm
Hmm.
aware of like colorism, right? Like I'm not a colorist. I don't believe it has value, but I think
Hmm.
it has social implications. And I wrote that I like that it has a darker skin cast. I think Nicholas is like the most lighter
Lightest in
skinned
the
person
family.
here, and
Yeah.
I love that representation. Again, because it
I wrote that
really
down too.
cool. because it really
because
hold on, because it really embodies and it really embodies and it's a necessary representation because of the
mhm,
slapstick comedy and
right.
again the nature of the show. Like it's lighthearted and it's just showing blackness and like a
Hmm.
nice fun light. Yeah,
I think, yeah, I thought that was really cool. Especially, I feel like, I don't know, in the '90s too. Um, there were more dark skinned wives on shows. You know what I mean? Like, even like Fresh Prince of Bel Air, the original Aunt Viv was dark skinned. Harry was dark skinned. Jerry was dark skinned. So that was nice to see too, because usually, like the dynamic sometimes is like darker skinned man, light skinned woman. So it was cool to see, like,
right,
two parents. Like Robert Townsend is brown skin. I feel like Jerry's a little bit darker than he is. Zarya is a browner. Like the whole cast, you're right. Like they're brown. Like Wendell's brown. Like the friends, everyone's like, you know, darker, which is always good to see. Um, but yeah, definitely, it's nice to see. I mean, just overall with this first season, it's just nice to see like a family like super involved with one another, constantly knowing what everybody is up to, like how Nicholas is doing in school, how Zarya is doing in school, how Michael's doing in school, everyone kind of caring about what's going on. Nicholas being a busybody and like taking joy out of reading Zarya's diary for some reason, but the whole family in itself are just like
right.
very nosy. What episode it's the episode with the that you mentioned earlier when they put in the security system.
Security alarm
Yeah.
system.
And Zarya's
Yeah,
listening through the walkie talkie to the the neighbor having an affair with his secretary. And
yeah,
even Cece knows about it.
yeah.
She's like, "Oh, that's his honey bun from down the street." And you're like, "Why does she know that?
Who the hell
Who
told you
told you
that? What
that?"
the hell you been doing? Like, why you not learning your
Right,
ABCs? Get
she's
out of here.
3. And she's like, "Oh, that's his honey
Right.
bunny." And I'm like, "Honey bunny? What in the hell?" But yeah, it's cute because they're like
You know,
super involved. Like they do things as a family, even if it is being a creep.
right. I was gonna say, I'm glad you brought up
Hmm.
Cece again. Parts of me doesn't like her character because I feel it's a very stereotypical like sassy slash sassy
Uh
little
huh.
kid slash yeah. I get that it
Hmm.
exists, but it was just and not saying like it is what it is, but just thinking about it and thinking about how like we overdoing the sassiness of little
Hmm.
kids, thinking about even the was it Step by Step, Michelle Tanner and all them. I don't know. I don't think I really like sassy kids anymore, and maybe it's just my age speaking
Yeah,
speaking
it's
for
your
itself.
age, Clifford. It's your age.
It
We're
is
at
the
that
age.
age where we're just like, sit your ass down. Stop all that talk.
Yeah, that's me. That's me as a parent, right? My kid can be sassy. Sit your ass down. Who told you about the neighbors? What are you up to,
Right.
right? What are you up to, right?
But they didn't really ask that. They were just like, oh, yeah, that's just Cece being Cece. Like, our family is just a
Yeah,
bunch of busybodies, which is still
yeah,
funny, too.
and
But,
that's good. Like it goes back to your point of just letting the kids be
right.
who they are, right, and not trying to overimpose what they should be doing, how they should be living. As long as they're up, decent members, not even upstanding. As long as they're
Yeah,
decent members of
pretty much.
society, they're
Yeah.
good. They're good. It's all good.
Because even like, Michael's a little bit of a horn dog in like a couple of episodes where he's just like, you can tell he's like thinking about ladies and stuff, and they're like, oh, let him be a horn dog, but as long as he's respectful, as long as he knows that he's supposed to, use protection and, be safe when having sex, then it's like not, that's not much more you can do. I feel like with this first season, they kind of give their kids the tools to make their own decisions, and then watch too closely whether or not they make the right decisions. But I also like the idea that the kids are constantly trying to get one over on the parents, and it just doesn't work because the parents are like,
Right.
we are smarter than you. We are better than you.
As they
Yeah.
should be, right?
But yeah, I I don't know. I just really think this show is like immediately so wholesome. Even though like there are some episodes I feel like are a little cringy. Like the cyber one where he's like in the chat rooms and they're like 10 pages of smut.
He who?
Um
Sorry.
when Robert looks at the
Okay.
cable, not the cable bill, the internet bill, and he's like, who's using these webs like these weird websites to chat? This is 10 pages of smut. Nicholas is like, what smut? He's like, don't explain anything to him. I can't remember what he said it was. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I really like this show because it's just so wholesome in the sense that it's just watching this black family do stuff.
Did you personify with any of the characters? Do you see yourself
Do I see
in any of the
myself in any of the
characters?
characters? I feel like I'm probably most like, I don't know, Wendell, just because he's so he's so ridiculous. I feel like I could be ridiculous sometimes. I love Zarya's clothes. I wish I had some of Zarya's clothes even to this day. Um, but maybe out of all the characters on there, I feel like I relate to the most. It would be Nicholas, just being nosy, just trying to figure out why my teeth haven't come in yet. You know?
So Nicholas over Wendell,
Yeah, Nicholas over
you'd say?
Wendell. I just feel like Nicholas just is really on the nose with how he's just trying to figure it all out more than anybody.
Right.
Who I feel like you're gonna say that Nicholas was somebody that you liked the most. But which character do you think resonated with you the most out of all of them?
I don't know. I think for this first season, it was like, I guess I saw
Mm-hmm.
myself a bit of Nicholas. At times, I kind of see myself as Michael, just like his relationship
Mm-hmm.
dynamic with Zara, and like comparing me and my sister's relationship.
Do you guys have that
Um,
relationship too where you're like frenemies?
nah, we're just friends. I mean, growing up, we probably enemies,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we just did extremes, right? We went from
Uh-huh.
enemies to now, like, that's my East Boone Coon.
Mm-hmm. How far apart are you guys in age?
4 years.
Okay.
Yeah. How far are you and your sister?
Like not like almost 2 years. She was born in 88. I was born in 87. She was born in December 88. I was born in March 87. So
What's your dynamic? Frenemies, friends, or enemies?
we're besties, man. Like me and my sister are besties. I feel like we like all siblings fight, but we never really fought that much. It was
Right.
mostly us against everybody else. I feel like when we were teenagers or when we were like going at it with our parents, it's like they don't know what they're talking about. They're like, yeah, they don't know what they're talking about. They're dumb. Or, but we've always been we've always been really cool. So I feel like our relationship would be more like Nicholas and Cece, where they're like, you know,
Right, right, right,
they're
right. They're
always
like Bonnie and
together.
Clyde,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Um, maybe I'll go with Robert.
Mm-hmm.
And this is me saying it now. I have to watch as the season evolves.
Mm-hmm.
Randall, minus the anxiety, minus the negative influence,
Yeah.
just like believe in himself and wanting that balance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like me. I keep saying Randall, Robert. I'm sorry. I think me and Robert just have the same values.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it.
Yeah. He's just like, yeah, I don't know. Robert Townsend as Robert Peterson is just a dad trying his best and very, very evident all the time that he's always trying to put his best foot forward. Um and you know, luckily he has like a wife that's also, like I said, his voice of reason or whatever, but he definitely is like gives off such a stand-up guy kind of like attitude, and is willing to learn, like I said before. But yeah, I just really like Robert Townsend.
Cool. Any final points before we wrap up?
um Honestly, everybody just go watch the first season of The Parenthood because it's just so
Where did you watch it
wholesome.
on?
I
Sorry.
watched it on HBO Max, but it's
Okay.
also
Yeah.
on YouTube.
For
um
free?
yes.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I found that out probably 15 minutes before we started this because I
Cool, cool, cool.
re-googled it and was seeing like what else is it on. But it's definitely on YouTube. But if you want to see just like black people doing stuff, just regular old family stuff, and just every episode, not every episode, but a lot of the episodes of this first season had a lot of really great guest stars. And just to honestly see Nicholas, wherever you are, I'm your biggest fan. You're the best thing in the world. Also, just seeing
Yeah, the
Wendell's and stuff.
best thing.
He is the best thing in the world. Faison Love is great in this too. I haven't seen Faison Love in much things in recent years because I'm like you. I don't actively look to see what Faison Love is doing. But him as Wendell on this show is like, it's very funny. And shout out to whoever plays. You know what? I'm not gonna say whoever plays Mrs. Wilcox. To the woman that plays Mrs. Wilcox. I can't find her name off right now. I wish I did have it. I'm gonna look it up. Mrs. Wilcox was like, I feel like she was so good and weird. Do you know her name off the top of your head?
I don't. Sorry.
Oops. Let me look it
I
up.
should be able to pull it up.
Carol Woods.
Okay.
Carol Woods. She's great on there. She's just overall very, very funny. Very, very expressive. But yeah, definitely watch this first season if you're a Nicholas stan.
If you're a Nicholas stan.
Like me.
All right. So our next episode is going to drop. So we're no longer doing Clubhouse recaps right after the first season of TV shows. We're just only going to do it toward the end once we wrap up everything, and we're going to transition to actually doing YouTube lives just to kind of make it a bit more interactive and fun. But our next episode after episode 1, which will be focused on seasons 2, 3, and 4, will be June 2nd. Yeah, so that's all I got. Thanks for rocking out with us. Peace.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. You can find us on YouTube for bi-weekly club discussions and occasional recaps at Nothing Moves Without Us. Please follow our TikTok and Instagram at A Black Culture Podcast, and you can watch podcast episodes on YouTube at Nothing Moves Without Us, A Black Culture Podcast.